So absence of Waldo is going to trigger the libs now with a takedown of the sensitive snowflakes.
All you SJWs, better stop listening to this podcast now, because we're going to go to some we're going to go to some interesting areas.
So, me and you as British colonialists, we think India should never have been liberated. Okay, we're off to a good start.
Yeah.
But yeah, so in the interim between when we last did a Simpsons review and now, there's been a little bit of Simpsons controversy. There's been a documentary made called The Problem With Apu, about the beloved character Apu Nahaspina Petlon, the Simpsons character. Basically, the show is sort of like, we should probably say neither of us have actually watched it.
We've not seen the actual documentary itself. Which what's the name of the guy who made it called?
I don't know, some guy. I don't even, what was it released on in the was it even released in the UK?
I don't know. The thing is, it's only a short thing.
It's 45 minutes.
Yeah.
It's by comic Harry Condabolu.
Apologies if we're mispronouncing this.
Yeah.
Harry Condabolu.
But yeah, so that's basically like a short documentary where him and a bunch of other sort of Indian American comics discuss the character of Apu. Apu, for some context, is a convenience store clerk at the Quickie Mart in the sort of once beloved television show The Simpsons, which has run from 1989 till now.
Or if you're speaking by conventional wisdom, 1989 while 1996.
Oh yeah, and now like a zombified version of it sort of exists. And it's sort of like he sort of like holds like a decent attempt to grapple with like what the character is now and the effect it's had on the community. As all these things do, it met with a sort of reasonable response online where people did sort of common sense, good-natured debates with each other about the themes raised, and we had a good discussion and everything was resolved nicely. End of podcast.
If only.
Yes, that was using the device of irony. Actually, it sort of blew up where people who probably have never actually watched it, similar to us, started defending and ridiculing the show based the documentary. I can't imagine that many people even watched it, to be honest.
No, I doubt a lot of the people who kind of got riled up in the controversy actually sat down and watched a documentary. I mean, we're actually sitting down to do a podcast and we're slightly hypocritical here because we've actually not seen what this guy has to say, really. Like, we know the gist of it.
Yeah.
But we've not actually sat down ourselves and watched it, so we're not off to a good start ourselves, to be honest. But
that's fine. We'll discuss the things around.
We can still bring around it. Yeah, we're allowed to do that because we're coming from a position of, well, we'll get there basically.
As like the Citizen Kane of Simpsons podcasts, I think if we had been running, to be honest, I don't think this controversy would have ever happened.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
we would have had like a take on it that would have been so authoritative. It would have been like, oh yeah, there is no need to debate this.
Everyone
now.
would have just calmed down, and the whole thing would have just blown over.
I think we need to use our inside voices. Richard Nixon there, ahoy hoy. But yeah, it blew up basically to the extent where The Simpsons itself fanned the flames.
Oh God!
We've seen.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you've seen that as well.
Yeah. So, but The Simpsons. So, as with most things like this, where people look at pieces of media in a critical light. Not as in terms of like criticising like the characters of the plot or the actual episodes themselves, but looking at the way it deals with representation of, let's say, race, gender, sexuality, etc. People misinterpreted that as basically being a direct attack on The Simpsons, when if anything it is just a critical look at what Apu the character means to a whole bunch of different kind of Indian Americans today, what the character meant growing up. People misconstrued this and see it as a direct attack on their nostalgia, a direct attack on their childhood. Oh, what's wrong with Apu? Is Crow not like Apu anymore? And it's part of just a wider problem with the internet at the moment and the extremes of what people call the PC culture.
I hear it's gone mad. In fact,
it's gone mad. Yes, it's PC gone mad. It's a wider issue with what people view as being quote unquote SJWs ruining it. millennials rethinking The Simpsons and ruining The Simpsons. You could go on. I mean, there's actually been a lot of controversy recently with the new series of Doctor Who, where people have been kicking off because the Doctor's a lady. And they've been doing some of the most socially conscious episodes for probably ever, actually, including a very, very, in my opinion, quite nuanced take on on Rosa Parks.
Yeah.
But people kicked off. They viewed it as basically being, Doctor Who going PC, SJW, was pandering to the SJW, was snowflake, millennial, all the buzzwords you want to throw out. And yeah, part of that wave of anger towards people reconsidering what quote-unquote PC culture is, has been fanning the flames of the issue with surrounding Apu. I mean, ultimately, I think an important question that's got to be raised and defined is what we mean by it's politically correct. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So in my eyes, political correctness is an attempt to empathise with a minority group who may have been not really, they've not really been. What's the word? I'll have a go at that because I actually wrote something from a blog about this for.
Well, you get that up then. I'll sort of give my take if that's okay with you. Not to sort of.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I just think of it as sort of like a sort of baseline of human decency.
Yeah, that's pretty much the gist of what I was saying.
But I don't.
Sorry,
think,
I'm doing a shill for my blog because I also write a blog now. It's called "A Blogger Needs a Focus Like a Fish Needs a Bicycle." It's wonderful. I new posts every Wednesday. A couple of Wednesdays ago, I talked about the controversy surrounding Rosa Parks and the episode. So check it out. Sorry, Marcus, go on.
And watch Recovery on Amazon while you're there. But yeah, so basically, I think it's just a basic attempt to give marginalised voices a sort of a voice, within media to make sure that things aren't sort of ridiculously stereotypical. To give a sort of realistic portrayal of sort of what different cultures are like. And
exactly. Yeah, I mean the way I defined it in my article about the Rosa Parks controversy is political correctness is essentially refers to any societal move that's designed to empathise with minority groups that bucks conventional modes of thinking.
Yeah.
People have thought about these ethnic minority groups in certain ways before, and political correctness is an attempt to basically say, like, actually, your way of thinking and attitudes towards that are probably wrong.
Yeah.
You probably shouldn't think that way.
I think there are like two different responses to sort of what's going on as well. I think there is like there's there are people who are just sort of out and out racist.
Yeah, sure.
More with the Doctor Who one than this, because quite frankly, I think in like America, obviously like African Americans take up a bigger place than sort of Indian Americans.
Sure,
like, just statistically from the amount of people there. Which are African American compared to Indian American, but like obviously there are people like that, and I think there are also people who like to imagine that like. Why are people bringing this up? I thought we'd sorted everything. I thought that we had everything sort of like resolved years ago. Like people who want to imagine that it's just stirring up resentments. That kind of attitude.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
yeah.
Why bring this up when we've sorted it's the end of history. There is no more racism.
Sure. Yeah. Which in itself, the whole kind of concept of the end of history is fairly ridiculous anyway. Because if anything, we should never stop learning. We should never stop learning to grow and to empathise. And if anything, empathy in general is down anyway. The Scouting Association released some statistics the other week. People think of it as kind of been quite a conservative organisation, and in some ways it's kind of not. It's kind of liberal in a way because it's one of the only major UK organisations to actually measure empathy.
Okay.
And in general, it's found that since 2016 in the UK, empathy amongst general people has drastically gone down.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, the way basically measured the way people respond to the questions. I think were designed to basically measure people's responses to certain, moral and ethical questions. And it revealed that in general, empathy has gone down, which is kind of depressing.
That amongst everyone, or just certain people.
Just amongst the, I can't remember what the body of people they interviewed, but they've taken it as like a wide selection of people from various different backgrounds and like I assume like gender and race and all that kind of stuff. So they've basically taken quite a large measure, and they've actually found that empathy in general has has declined.
Yay!
I mean, I don't know if it's in any relation to events of 2016.
Yeah.
I'm assuming so.
Well, I think people are more like divided than ever.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
You know, like there's all these big divisions between young versus old, sort of class division that's sort of been brought up. That sort of this is again now. People used to think these things were like just resolved, like oh we don't have these issues anymore and stuff like. And they've just sort of boiled to it's like a bottleneck situation now. I think it's just a bunch of stuff that's been building up for like years and decades, sort of like coming apart.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
This is a very long-winded intro to talk about the character of Apu in the Simpsons.
But I think it's important to set up.
Yeah, it's important for the context, though.
Yeah, it's important to set up our take on it.
Yeah,
because obviously we're coming from a position of of course we want to empathise with people, of course we want to understand and we want to learn, and we don't pretend to know everything and we don't always say the right things, and it's a case of learning.
Well, I think it's important with like who you empathise with as well.
Sure, yeah.
Like I think like amongst young people, I empathise with old people as much as they used to do, quite frankly. And I think old people like they don't empathise with like I think there's like the divisions that have been a thing. I think have made people not empathise with the. I'd be interested to read this survey actually to see what the sort of questions were. It's
quite interesting, yeah. Like and it came from a Scout organisation as well. So which I do find interesting.
Like because Britain, we're not into too much. It had a pretty close vote that sort of divided the country almost in half.
Really?
Yeah, and I think that the two groups in that have less empathy for each other than before. And when times get hard, people sort of try and cling on to what they've got and stuff. And
here we go. Yeah, so they basically put a new YouGov poll has found that the majority of British adults, 51%, who expressed a view, believe there is less empathy in UK society now than just 12 months ago. The startling statistic is in line with global trends, the growth of social media, and what's been dubbed Generation Me. We find this emerging crisis of empathy unacceptable. It is damaging society and reducing the life chances of young people. And Chief Scout Bear Grylls has called for urgent action to provide more opportunities for young people to develop this essential skill. However, a huge 92% of public who expressed a view agree that Scouts do. So that's a bit more about them. So then YouGov then went a bit more specific and polled 2,000 British leaders. And the Chief Scout has urged urgently for more volunteers to help young people develop this crucial skill. So it's not good.
you see, I would think though, like that like it's old people who have less empathy than young people. They seem to care less about like the preservation of society than young people, in my eyes, to be honest. Like,
yeah, I mean, you'd like to think so. Definitely, I think unfortunately, it's more complex.
Yeah.
Like, because I think like if you grow up in like an insulated community,
yeah,
you're kind of surrounded by old people.
Yeah.
I think unfortunately, I think a lot of what people learn is passed down from that.
Yeah.
And you don't really think, oh, that's just the way it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose there's this big cities and towns dynamic as well.
That plays a big part into it as well. Of like maybe again, I hate sounding like elitist or anything, but you think about maybe slightly more educated people versus people who they've always been in the town that they've lived in, and they're only going to think in certain ways.
Yeah.
So if someone comes along and says that there's a problem with Apu,
yeah.
They're gonna be like, what is the problem with Apu? Like, it's PC gone mad. And it's easy to see how you can kind of stoke the flames of that, I guess.
And just to make, I don't think it's elitist to say that like people who are in deprived situations are tend to have more reactionary views, because I think it depends what your. If your response is they're stupid, then that's reactionary. If your response is we need to help these people, then that's good.
Yeah, obviously, yeah.
So yeah, that's sort of the background to like this this current crisis. So what do you actually think of the Apu character himself?
Well, I was talking to you about this before we actually decided we were going to talk about the problem with Apu, and honestly, it's something that I've not ever really considered because it's so Apu. And a lot of the other kind of caricatures of Springfield are so ingrained into my subconscious. I often say that I can't remember a time before The Simpsons. Apu and like Mo and like Bumblebee Man. We're all so ingrained into my psyche that I must admit, even growing up, becoming who I am today, I've never thought of Apu. You know what? Maybe there is a problem with him.
Yeah.
And obviously we'll get into the way that the writers have handled it and responded to it, but they've obviously done it in the worst way possible. In just, well, I mean, there's all sorts of rumours flying around at the moment about what could happen. The thing is obviously, I ultimately don't have a massive problem with Apu, but that's because I am not the person that's been offended by it.
Yeah.
I'm upset that Apu has caused, like, problems for people, for, like, Indian Americans.
Yeah.
And has been, like, a source of, like, you know, like, racism. But that's down to, I think, people.
Yeah.
And also it comes from, again, the problem is that The Simpsons should have ended, like, in 97, 98. Because The Simpsons is essentially a time capsule of 1990s culture. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we got to remember, with Apu, he was created by a dozen or so white guys, college guys, and a lot of it kind of stems from the fact that in the early 90s in America there was an influx of Indian immigrants, and a lot of these kind of white, slightly liberal writers realised that, yes, you know what, there are a lot of Indian immigrants working at my local convenience store now.
Yeah.
And that's where Apu comes from.
Yeah.
Because, you know, but it's just, because of that diaspora of, people coming in and taking the lower paid jobs to work themselves up. And that's kind of where it came from. That's where Apu comes from. So it comes from, the problem with the character is that it's built on a foundation of slight white privilege.
Yeah.
So you're off to a great start straight away, which is why The Simpsons should have ended in the 90s, because it's such a time capsule of that period. Like in our last podcast we recorded today, we talked about how abortion doesn't come up in I Married Marge, in the episode I Married Marge. The issue of abortion doesn't come up at any point. Obviously now that's maybe something that maybe with slightly better writers The Simpsons would consider. But back in the 90s it's just not something, not really something to think about. For like a small hick town.
Yeah.
And that kind of attitude, they wouldn't think about, oh, Marge should get an abortion. I don't think The Simpsons would go there.
Yeah, and especially considering the network environment at the time as well. Like, it just wouldn't have been on one of the first sort of cartoons for kids and adults that was like everyone watched together as well. Like,
exactly, yeah.
Yeah, it just wouldn't have. It would have been way too different. Like, can you imagine like the religious right complaining about it? Like,
yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like, people hate, religious right-wing people hate The Simpsons anyway. Obviously Ronald Reagan and his famous line, we've got to try and, make more families like the Waltons and not The Simpsons.
Wasn't that Bush?
It was Bush, it was Bush, yeah. Because there's the episode where George Bush moves in next door, yeah.
But and I think and all that it is what you think about the context of when it came out, there was a lot of shows that did this kind of thing. Like, it is, we talked about before, like the end of history. So it's like, well, it can't be. It's obviously playing with this. It can't be racist itself. You also have the worst one to watch back is, and I'm shocked this hasn't caused more offence, South Park with the Chinese characters will talk like this. Yeah. There's a joke on that. I watched like the second season, which is just straight up racism.
Yeah.
Where they go like, "This is my impression of an Englishman," and then he like puts his eyes up.
Oh no.
You can't see what I'm doing. But I've just lifted my eyes up because it's sort of the joke that they have, like,
Well, yeah, because the guy who works at City Walk, the joke is that he says city like shitty.
Shitty Walk, and like it's them doing like an accent of that quality. Yeah.
I mean, I'll be honest in that South Park's a show that as time passes by, I find more and more egregious. Yeah. I have more and more issues with.
Well, you can't watch some of them. Like do you remember the Man Bear Pig one where it's like laughing at Al Gore for thinking climate change is real?
Or the episode where it basically, through the metaphor of Kyle's dad wants to become a dolphin, is dealing with transgender issues.
Don't remember that.
Oh, it's awful.
I was never a massive fan of South Park, so I always hated that kind of like, well, the right's pretty stupid, but so is the left, or atheism's stupid, and so is the religion. It's like, well, some people are objectively going to be right about some things.
Yeah. I mean, that's my thing. It's not something I really picked up on when I was younger, but like definitely as I've grown older, the more you think about it, it's like ultimately I don't think it's a very healthy worldview to have. Like I think South Park's fine when you're a certain age and you're first getting into quote unquote edgy stuff. You know what I mean? You're kind of getting politicized. You're getting into like, maybe we should be criticizing the establishment because it's funny. Like, it's occasionally smartly written. and deals with real world issues. Unfortunately, because of the way I used to think the best thing about South Park was they made them every single week so they could react to whatever is happening in the media at the time.
Yeah.
But that's the problem I've got now, where it's so reactionary.
Yeah.
It's not thinking about, like, actually, let's take a step back from this. It's thinking, this is how we were feeling that week.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I don't think their worldview of neither side is right, believing nothing, is basically the message of South Park. And, yeah, you're right. Honestly, I think that already is going to be the groundswell of criticism towards it, and I think it's going to kind of gain traction.
And I was listening to a podcast talking about it, and they were right. Like, the basic format of the show is, like, a character will, they'll notice a problem with things, and then they'll try and fix it, and they will just sort of make things worse. And so the message is, never try and improve things, you'll only make things worse.
Exactly,
which is just like, what? So just let things gradually get worse? Like,
yeah.
It's just, I think it is just sort of the worst type of that kind of, like, it's just nihilism, essentially. With no belief that anything can ever get any better. But... Yeah,
exactly. And it's not healthy. But then a lot of people internalise a lot of, like, what South Park's talking about. Kind of in a similar way to the way people aspire to be like Rick from Rick and Morty.
Oh yeah.
A lot of people kind of aspire to South Park and buy into South Park's ideology, which I think is ultimately unhealthy and quite destructive.
Yeah.
Looking back at retrospect, I mean, don't get me wrong. There's South Park episodes that I think are great and I love them when it's just trying to be just a funny show, and it can be a very funny show.
Yeah.
But at its worst, like the transgender one, like where Kyle's dad always wants to be a dolphin, and he's basically like, you shouldn't want this. It's like, you should feel comfortable in your body. It's like, fuck off. Like it's so just like simplistic and like, I don't buy into it. But yeah. So,
but I think that Simpsons it's not that bad, obviously, but it has a similar kind of like. We're taking the piss out of everyone, and it's like, everything goes because it's sort of like the end of history. There is no problems anymore. It's just solving sort of like, I think the inherent idea behind Apu being played by Hank Azaria is, there isn't racism anymore. It is not like we're in sort of a liberal America. This is not like this can't be racist. That's the inherent assumption behind it.
Yeah. And I mean, like, we've got to the point now where people are paying more attention to that kind of thing. Yeah. Like, the creator of BoJack Horseman recently expressed regret that while Alison Brie, while she's excellent as Diane, who's a Vietnamese-American woman in the show, obviously Alison Brie is not Vietnamese-American, and while she gives a great vocal performance, he said it's one of his regrets where he cast her, because he's got this problem where he's like, I'm part of the problem. And since then, he's gone to real efforts to hire people of diversity into the cast, which I think is the key thing that The Simpsons should have done. There's several ways they could have dealt with this Apu problem. Not have the terrible, like shorthand thing of all characters. Well, the fact that Lisa does it is what I hate it so much. It's them not understanding their characters anymore.
Yeah.
The fact that Lisa, of all characters, turns to the camera and says, "Yeah, what's right? What's wrong? Who knows? Some things were okay back in the day and now they're not." Yeah. It's like, no, Lisa would be the one pointing out that, oh, Apu, you're a bit of a racial stereotype.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, Lisa would be that person. But there's the episode where Lisa feels strongly about her Malibu Stacy doll.
Yeah.
Has been like, basically, she's coming to a realization that she's a feminist.
Yeah.
She's learning what it means to be a feminist and what it means to be offended by a piece of commercial commercial product aimed at girls, and she's offended by it because it's sexist.
Yeah.
She'd be the person to call that out. That is Lisa that turns to the camera and says, like, oh, who's right? I don't know. And then there's even rumours now that we're just going to get rid of Apu completely from the show. And it wasn't directly from the Simpsons creative team itself. It was from someone like on the outskirts to it.
All right.
But the producer came back and said, "Oh, so and so doesn't speak for the Simpsons creative team," which basically is a yes or it's been not confirmed or denied it. And I think the ad is going to quietly get rid of him.
Yeah, I think he stepped into sort of being too controversial now to sort of keep on with any kind of.
But like, there's so many ways that you could have kept Apu while addressing the problem.
Yeah.
How about, for starters, you diversify your writing team?
Yeah.
You hire an Indian American actor to voice Apu and not have it be Hank Azaria. You kind of circumnavigating that problem. Or do an episode where you're directly confronting the issue, like actually exploring it. You know what I mean? Because there are lots of interesting things about how different nationalities react to the way that you're represented in media. There are lots of different reactions to it. So for example, with the whole issue of let's say whitewashing of Ghost in the Shell.
The Scarlett Johansson
film,
anime.
Obviously over here, in general, but the discourse was that people were offended by the fact that a white woman had been cast in what was previously a Japanese woman role.
Yeah.
But then when I think they had a couple of interviews go out to Japan and asked, "Oh, what do you think of Scarlett?" Asking some Japanese people, "What do you think of Scarlett Johansson playing Major Kusanagi?" And they were like, "Oh, she looks great. She looks just like the character. Man, It's great. I'm really happy that Japanese culture's getting out there." So there's lots of interesting ways that you kind of can deal and engage with the issue of race and the way it's represented on screen, and have an episode where you directly deal with that.
Yeah.
Explore it. But The Simpsons isn't that show, unfortunately, because as I said, it's a time capsule of the 90s which should have been cancelled a decade and a half ago at least.
Yeah. Well, they have a big problem now because they sort of they never really engage with modern politics. I mean, they've had people like Obama on the show, though, and Tony Blair was on at one point.
Trump was on at one point.
Was
recently.
it?
Yeah, I'm fairly certain Trump's been in it.
But they've never actually changed any of the dynamic within the sort of family and stuff. No. Well, it would be difficult because, quite frankly, the Simpsons family wouldn't exist now. They wouldn't have, one father wouldn't be able to feed the family and stuff.
In the huge mansion that he lives in. And
Yeah, they wouldn't be able to have that massive house. These kind of communities were kind of destroyed in, the financial crash and the sort of ensuing sort of, there are interesting stuff they could do if they actually updated the characters in the world, but there's no way
but they're not going to do that, are they?
There's no real way to do it, though. Can you imagine, the real-life implications of who Homer Simpson would be in the real... He would probably vote for Trump, to be honest.
Probably, yeah. Yeah, it's an unfortunate reality. Yeah.
Maybe even Marge would as well, to be honest.
Marge probably would, yeah. Lisa definitely wouldn't. Lisa
she wouldn't be able to vote, shouldn't
yeah, true, yeah. But, if she could vote...
Yeah,
she'd... yeah. But... I don't know.
It's a problem with the moulding of the two different cultures of a 90s sensibility in a show that's run on too long, as you keep saying. This problem is only going to get worse as sort of the sort of problems within sort of America and sort of, I suppose, the world in general intensifies.
Exactly,
it's going to look more and more like a relic.
But I'm about to say, the thing is, that's why it's important to engage with media.
Yeah.
Because it's understanding, I always think of, whenever I reference this kind of issue, of people looking critically at something, I always think of Anita Sarkeesian, who's the feminist video game critic, who said, "I'm going to look at video games through a feminist lens." She wasn't criticising the games themselves.
Yeah.
She's saying they could be great games, it could be bad games. I'm looking at this through a critical lens of how the video game industry deals with representation of females.
Yeah.
Right? And I agree with 95% of what she said. I found it to be interesting, quite engaging. But the internet tore her to shreds. They hated what she was doing, sent her death threats. She's probably had to change her address, and and when you're getting threats of I'm going to rape you because you're critically engaging with a piece of media.
That's pretty disgusting.
It's pretty disgusting, yeah. When right off the bat she's saying, "I'm not because the problem as well, it's part of what's called gatekeeping.
Yeah.
Where fans of the internet feel I grew up with this. It's mine. You can't touch it. No, this is my thing. You're not going to ruin it. This is my precious thing for my childhood, and you're not going to ruin it. Which is part of the controversy of Doctor Who casting a female Doctor, which is the fact that that's controversial is the stupidest thing ever.
Hey, I want my 9,000-year-old alien to be a man.
Exactly, yeah. Trust me, Doctor Who has done way stupider things in its time than having a lady be the Doctor. Way stupider things.
I don't get why that would be a problem for anyone, to be honest.
Because people are idiots.
I know people are idiots, but even that takes to almost a comical extreme of being it's a fucking kids show as well at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It's aimed at young children. It's not supposed to be something that adults could kick off about and
Yeah, well, that's the thing is people have got such a clear idea of how something should be.
Well,
and
Star Wars, I think, is the ultimate
Yeah,
example
Star
as
Wars,
well.
yeah.
Like, you know, why are there black stormtroopers and like?
Yeah, well, when did Star Wars has kind of always probably been a hotbed of toxicity, but like especially in the fandom, but. Yeah, no, especially recently, that has been like the ultimate example of where a fandom has just reacted so badly to what, not all fandom, but like a subsect of the fandom has reacted to. The SJWs have ruined Star Wars, and there's women and people of color in the films now. It's like whoa, and it's also worth mentioning as well, which I take great delight in that the highest grossing Star Wars films that Disney have produced. Of all the female roles.
Yep.
And the lowest grossing one was the one about the ultimate white male power fantasy. Is the one that flopped at the box office.
Yeah.
Which, you know, you kind of got to take some slight glee in that.
Well, who wanted a Han Solo film to get completely off? I think though, like Star Wars though, I'm gonna say it's a bit. I think like the originals, they're a bit dodgy. Like they're a bit racist and anti-Semitic. Like those Jawas are clearly supposed to be Jews. And like, look at them though, and like look at Watto in the prequels as well.
Yeah, he's like his typical or like the villains of a Phantom Menace. You know what I'm doing is
the Japanese business.
Japanese businessman. It's like, oh no.
And like, you know, the only character
so sorry that we're having to do with the probably slightly racist voices, but it's the only way to communicate our horror at them.
Well, hopefully people will hear that, be repulsed, and then think, oh yeah, they are repulsive in there.
They are repulsive, and
we're making art ourselves now.
But you see, you know there's going to be a whole bunch of people being like, nope, you can't criticise my Star Wars. No, that's it. Like, this is my precious little thing. Like, my precious little thing. You can't criticise it.
Well, there were a lot of people when Star Wars came out who said it was like pretty problematic. Just for like, well, they were saying like, you know, stuff about like the Jawas being clearly Jewish, and also that it was like just bloodless slaughter. Like there was no weight or anything to what was happening when they like just kill like all the people that are involved in it.
Sure, yeah.
Which I suppose is a kind of problem with any kind of like children's entertainment that features sort of like people getting killed. Like
sure, but then like in the wider discourse, obviously with how Star Wars developed, it's not really something that's been brought up or discussed.
Well, there's the sort of like, you know, history is written by the victors.
Exactly,
it's such a big thing. Like people just assume, I think, that no one ever criticised it. When it came out, it was not like as critically acclaimed as you'd think. It probably got very mixed reviews. I've read mixed reviews from when it came out. Like,
yeah.
And there were people interpreting it in like a fascist context as well. That was quite big. Like.
Yeah, well, it probably big in the academia world, right?
Yeah. And like the people who criticised it would have written for like, well, there was more like obscure journals back then that were able to keep going. Anyway, back to the Problem With Apu. Have you heard the stupid take of like, well, they have a woman playing Bart?
That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
So why can't they have like Hank Azaria playing Apu?
Because I mean, Jesus Christ! I mean, how do you even start? Like, I mean, how do you start to unpack it all? Because ultimately, all this stuff is, you know, it's. I think ultimately, when you look at something like political correctness and that kind of stuff, and even if you want to go slightly wider with it, you've got to accept that a lot of this stuff is it's not, as I said, it's not criticising the product. It's just critically assessing the way it handles this aspect.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, you know. What are the like overriding like feminist themes of The Simpsons, for example, and how well does The Simpsons succeed as a feminist text?
Yeah,
as one example. But the problem is that people aren't grown up enough to critically engage, and film and TV. They're relatively young, still quite young mediums.
Only 100 years old, film 50 or so for TV.
Yeah, and video games as well, even less, like 25 years. And, we're not at a point yet where, like, if you were to do, like, a feminist discourse on, I don't know, Herman Melville's works, for example, you're not going to get, like, angry, rabid Moby Dick fans on the internet, like, going nuts. You're going to have people go, oh, well, that's an interesting take. I disagree. Here's my response.
It's the kind of thing and all where, like, the older a medium gets, the more respect it gets. So, like, people, I think, quite frankly, don't think of video... Well, there's still a debate about whether video games are art.
They are.
Is but that's the point, that there is a debate about it is the thing
exactly,
that is like could you imagine if I said, oh yeah, books are just a piece of paper with words on, they're not art, they're just like a bit of entertainment, you'd get like, you know, no one would take you seriously.
Exactly, yeah.
But if I said, oh, video games are just a distraction, then you'd just be laughed at. You'd just be like, oh, no, people would take you seriously,
exactly,
especially the higher up you went, I think. Like, I think there's a class-based idea that video games are for, like, rubes who don't know when to...
And I mean, part of a piece of art being accepted into the wider discourse is the fact that you've got to accept that part of art is engaging with it and look at it from different critical points of view. So if you want video games to get an ounce of respect to be considered art, you've got to accept that people are going to be critically looking at them. Yeah. You know, like, how well does this handle this? You know, like, how does it handle this aspect? You know, for example, this isn't so great, this is great. You know what I mean? Like, there's some really thematically dense games being made these days, especially on the indie scene. Like, I played one this year called Celeste, which is like a mini masterpiece. It's like a platformer game, but it's all about anxiety, depression, and mental health, and it's all done through the gameplay.
Okay.
It's super clever and it's super good. But then, like, you know, then you're gonna have to apply the same criteria to looking at something like, I don't know, Grand Theft Auto.
Well, that's problematic.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what you talk about. But that's what it takes for something to be considered a piece of art, is accepting that there's going to be critical hot takes on things.
Yeah.
But I don't think film, TV.
Film, I think, is better because they teach that
in.
They teach it in universities and stuff. Yeah,
it's getting there now. We're at like a generation now where we're like a couple. You know, we're several generations down now, where we've gone from the days of your cahiers du cinémas, and we've gone to the next couple generations where people have, you know, they've studied film in university or college or whatever. So it's definitely getting there, definitely. But you know, we can't be having it where every single time someone does like I hate calling them hot takes, but you know, like where someone does do a critical assessment of, let's say, like Star Wars, for example, you can't be having it where every single time like the writer's going to get death threats.
That's pretty bad, yeah.
You know, like you just got to accept that that's kind of the thing.
Yeah, like, do these people not believe in free... I hate it all, because there are all these wankers who are like, this PC, it's going to stop free speech. But then, like, you realise that you are telling someone they can't write what they want then, like...
Exactly,
How can you be that hypocritical, though, to not realise that what you're saying is essentially this person should be silenced in the name of free speech?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
It's the dumbest thing ever, like, I don't understand who these people are or what they...
Where they come from, or...
Yeah, because it's just unbelievable, isn't it, that, like, these people can be so hypocritical about realising and... It's like, the people making that documentary about it didn't even ask for him to be, like, cancelled or anything. Didn't ask it to be banned or it's just a discussion about the thing, like.
Yeah, exactly. He was just looking at what Apu means to Indian Americans.
Yeah.
It's an interesting topic because, again, coming from positions of, you know, being white males, you know, you don't often get that perspective.
Yeah.
And it's good to have. It's like, right, okay, shit, I never thought of Apu that way. I'm sorry that he's caused offence to people, and here are ways that we can improve upon it. Like, that's how a society develops.
Yeah.
Like, that's what we should be aiming for. Like, shit, yeah, like, you know, for example, see, the thing I find a bit crazy is that, like, the music industry, especially the rock and roll of the 70s, goes, like, unengaged with. I think it's because the people who are in the relative positions of power now in that industry in terms of like critical thinking, the people who grew up with that music. But when you get right down to it, the lyrics of, let's say, like Led Zeppelin...
Lick my lemon dry.
Exactly, yeah. Like, there might be beloved songs, but there is some dodgy shit. Like, you remember Led Zeppelin's song Custard Pie?
Give me a... Yeah.
Yeah.
Licky old custard pie, whatever it is.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Well, a lot of that kind of stuff's just... I'm not a fan of Led Zeppelin. I've made it noticed. A lot of that I think is terrible. Like,
yeah.
But I think a part of it is like, why are these people defending like does the Simpsons need defending? It's like it's made by multi-millionaires on like the biggest network, run by Rupert Murdoch. Like, honest to God, do they honestly think that the Simpsons is like some kind of... Well, it's like the same with like Star Wars. Does George Lucas need defending? Like one of the richest men on Earth. Like, it's just insane, isn't it? Like, why do you feel the need to defend these people who are like just huge and don't need anything? Like,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
and like when you're attacking like the actresses in like Star Wars, these are like the people that need like support and stuff. Like,
Yeah.
they're like not paid anywhere near as much as like the producers of it and stuff, and it's mind-boggling.
Yeah.
To get back to Apu,
We're not even sorry, guys. We're not even talked about Apu that much.
it's a very interesting topic.
Oh,
that.
very, really interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know what they should do with it. To be honest, they've handled it incredibly badly and made it much worse. I reckon if the documentary had come out and they'd ignored it, it would have probably just gone away. To be honest,
Probably would have blown over. Yeah.
Like, I don't think people were that bothered until they responded to it and like
Yeah.
basically said, "This is just a bunch of nothing." I'm like, "Go away!" Like,
And people were just like, "The fuck," like it's the worst way possible that you can handle any kind of like controversy by kind of just sweeping it under the rug and just pretending it's not there. I mean, getting completely off topic, like this year there was a lot of controversy with Channel Awesome.
Oh yeah.
And
Our rival.
Our rival, yeah. But you know, the allegations against Channel Awesome, and they responded in the worst way possible by A, really not acknowledging, and B, not engaging, and C, ultimately doing nothing to make amends. And that's pretty much the same thing I think with the Simpsons writers. Oh,
Yeah.
the Simpsons creative team now, or the executive producer in charge, they've made no real attempt to engage, understand, and make amends outside of, let's get rid of him. Just avoid the controversy completely. This show makes millions for the Fox network. It doesn't matter that we only get 4 million views every Sunday, like, whatever, we'll just...
Basically, The Simpsons should end.
Yeah.
But still, do you think there will be more, like... who else is a problematic character in The Simpsons? Bumblebee Man, but he's too much of a cartoon, like...
Yeah, he's yeah.
There's no real, like, everyday characters who are, like, sort of normal in it and stuff, like...
Maybe someone like Barney.
Barney,
Well,
who's
like,
an alcoholic.
But yeah, the joke of Barney is that he's an alcoholic.
Yeah.
And they keep on plying him with more alcohol. They basically, the people at Moe's Tavern are enablers.
They are, yeah. Well, Homer's an alcoholic as
Homer's
well.
alcoholic, yeah.
Think about Homer as a real character, an alcoholic reactionary who...
child abuser.
Well, yeah, he strangles his kid as well, like... there's loads of elements of it that just wouldn't happen now as well, like...
Yeah, definitely.
Send it there. It's too much of this. Too much.
we could go on and on there. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed our 5-minute discussion of the problem with Apu and enjoyed our 40 minutes of ramblings about the problem
of context.
of context and the wider issue with engaging with popular culture.